Hey everyone, welcome back to the Badass Podcast, Batman the Animated Series Show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series, or in this case, the new adventures, the Batman and Robin, new Batman Adventures. That's not as catchy to say, and it doesn't form a nice. Is it acronym or anagram? I think it's acronym. BATTASS, and spells a word that's an acronym.
A really great opening so far, Clay. This is amazing.
You know, I'm just trying to get the specifics down, so if you're a new listener, you understand what you're in for. And what you're in for is an hour talking
chaos
about Batman. Anyway, my name is Clay McCormick, and with me, as always, is Sean Murphy. How you doing, Sean?
Man, I tried so hard not to drink too much last night when I went out, and as always, it just gets away from me, you know?
Yeah, I could tell by the text that you sent our text chain at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning that I won't repeat on air.
I don't remember what I said. I'm sure it was clever and PC.
No, it was neither of those things.
Usually, you guys are the night owls, rather. Mm-hmm. I go to bed at midnight and I get up at 7. Like, I've been pretty regular. And 2 of you have kids now, so you're up with me normally. And 2 of you are still without children and sleep in like most artists do, work late, whatever it is. So I took a chance maybe 2 of you were awake.
No, I fell asleep pretty early on the couch last night, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, now who's talking about stuff everybody wants to hear is whether or not we fall asleep on the couch or went drinking. We're going to be talking about 2 episodes today. As always, we've got one where 2 villains make a return and one where we have a new villain appearing for the first time on the show. We're doing Love is a Crock and Torch Song, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll jump into Love is a Crock. Love is a Crock, written by Steve Gerber, directed by Butch Luchik.
Luchik, that's a name I don't know.
Yeah, he's shown up a couple times, but I don't see his name as often as some other people. In this one, Baby Doll becomes enamored of Killer Croc, and the pair forms a very unlikely yet very successful criminal duo. However, their partnership soon falls apart when Baby Doll learns that Croc is only using her to further his own criminal career. I'm really conflicted about this episode because...
For which reason? Pick a reason.
I think there's a really great story in here, but they don't do anything with it. Like the idea of Baby Doll finding a kindred spirit in Killer Croc is really fun, and I think could be a really interesting setup if maybe there was actually like a relationship there and it wasn't just Croc being like an abusive boyfriend and Baby Doll being a manipulative girlfriend. If they're even like romantically involved, which, as Batman says when Batgirl questions it, I don't want to know. It's another one that ends very abruptly. They're trying to another thing where they're trying to shut down a nuclear explosion from happening. I don't even know if they do that because it ends so abruptly.
Well, Batman lets Batgirl do it, and he's like, "Are you able to do that? Good."
Well,
and he just sort of walks away.
As we learned from the first time that they did this plot element, Barbara's just going to look at it for a few minutes and then pull all the wires out and hope that works.
It does.
Yeah, it did the first time. As she says, she brings that attitude to it in this one because Batman says, "Do you think you could do this?" And she goes, "Well, we'll find out in a minute, and after that, we won't care." So,
yeah, I had to rewind to re-listen to what the hell she said. Like, in a minute, you either won't know or won't care.
Yeah, and
it's like, you won't care. What do you? What?
It means they'll be dead.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah. I guess I didn't really. That wasn't a very smooth line.
Yeah, it's just either way. I feel like she should be taking it a little more seriously. And then we don't even find out if she. I don't think we find out if she successfully diffuses the atomic bomb that's going to happen. I guess we can assume that they do.
I mean, if there's another episode next week, then they probably took care of the bomb.
Right. But yeah, it's just I don't know. What do you think about this?
It's weird. I applaud you for seeing the potential here. I don't. I want to be in the pitch meeting when they're like, let's take the two most unlikely characters who have nothing in common and let's make them get together and let's imply like a kind of a weird romance that's sort of icky. Like they know, they draw attention to the fact that this is weird. I mean, Batman and Batgirl obviously talk about it, but I don't know. Sometimes this episode is trying to be like the first Baby Doll, which I think is like, for me, one of my top 10 episodes in the series. Shockingly, because like, if you read that idea to me, I would think this is going to suck. But the last moment when Batman has empathy for her and puts his hand on her head, that's such a beautiful moment. And they sort of try to recreate that in this one. But like you said, it's too quick and too cold, and the episode wants you to feel some kind of sadness for her again, for struggling to put together a new family, just like on TV or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But for me, it's just very cringy at the end, because I'm like, no, I'm not buying what you're doing. I don't feel it like you made me feel it the first time around.
Yeah, it's also exceptionally weird because when she gets together with Croc, she basically reverts entirely to the Baby Doll persona.
It's so gross. I hate when chicks do that.
Especially if they look like 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like her character is that she's using that as a smokescreen because she's sick of it disarms people and she's sick of people taking advantage of her. You would think that if she's like with this other person who she feels she can be herself with, she wouldn't do that. And the fact that she does stay in that persona feels weird and just kind of gross. Yeah. And Croc isn't really bringing anything to the table here as far as a character or design. We should talk about his design. Terrible design.
It's so boring. It's so obvious. Like, I know, let's make him green because alligators are green.
Yeah.
Yep, fucking brilliant. You're fired. Get out of the meeting.
His first design was so great because he was, just weird enough looking.
Yeah.
Without going too over the top, and this one is green and a very all things considered, a normal looking face. And
he's smarter too. Like he used to be a dumbass, and now he's just a dick who goes out late.
Yeah,
and hits women.
Yeah, yes. I feel like this story would work much better with the older version of Killer Croc, because I feel like you could almost get. Remember the episode where he runs into the woods and ends up shacking up with the circus people? Yeah, I feel like you could get a little bit of that energy out of it if it's that older version of Croc and a version of Baby Doll who's like, she sees a kindred spirit in this other outcast, and she's trying to make this life with him, and maybe he's kind of into it, maybe he's not. There's no reluctance from him in this. It's just him being an asshole. Yeah,
I think you're right. If he was the older version was he was dumb, but he had a bit of empathy.
Yeah,
there was a little bit of sadness, especially with the circus episode where he's in the woods or whatever. He's like, I guess I was just being myself. There's a hint of sadness there. It's not too big. But I feel like if you had that version of Clock, this might have worked better. And I think to spark off this so-called romance, I would have had him save her accidentally or something. Rather than her seeing this on TV. And by the way, live court TV in Gotham of this guy breaking out is just, I don't know, like C-SPAN with Killer Croc,
Hey, it would get more eyeballs on C-SPAN.
That's true. You know what? I would watch that.
If during the Congress proceedings at 2:00 in the afternoon, just the Penguin showed up or something.
It was basically like Judge Judy, but all the people there are cosplayers who committed crimes, and they have to be tried while they're dressed up still.
Sean, don't give these. It's such a good idea for a web show. Don't give that idea away. How has nobody done that? That's a fantastic idea.
Has someone done it?
I don't think so.
You shitting me?
No, I don't think. I've never seen it before. It just seems like a great idea for like a web short series of
it's cheap to do. You could have it could be like a Adult Swim type thing, like Little Robot Chicken style. Super easy to animate. You don't have to do walking and running cycles. There's no action, explosions. It's just Judge Judy with cosplayers.
Yeah, just use live action, and so you get the people in the costumes and stuff. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
do it. Let's quit this right now. Enough of Batman.
That's true. We do have enough of a lead on this that we could get ahead of it before this episode comes out. Anyway, well. Yeah. There's no. It seems like I was really wondering if we had turned a corner with this one and the last one, because the Growing Pains with the Clayface girl was the first one we were like, oh, this feels like old Batman the Animated Series. It's got that heart to it. It's got that sad pathos to it. And so when this one started, and I liked that first scene with Baby Doll working as a receptionist at a hotel.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
the guy dressed as Norman Lear.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, with the hat, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that stuff was good. I thought the lead-up was good. I thought her, it's very random for her to just see him on the TV, as you're saying, and like kind of fall in love or whatever. But I was thinking, oh, maybe this is going to be another one that has that heart from the original series, but it just doesn't. Yeah. And
one day I'm going to pitch to DC. I want to do a one-shots comic series based on these episodes. Mm-hmm. And we'll do like series 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to pick artists who I don't like and give them episodes like this.
Hey, well, see, this is the kind of episode that I would want to write, because it is one of those episodes where I feel like it's in there. You just gotta strip it away and remold it a bit, and I think you get a really good episode out of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't have the heart that I think it wants to have. It's
too odd to pull off. Like, your brain is doing a record scratch the whole time. I can't really move on to feeling sad for her because my brain is still doing a record scratch.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and there's no kindness in their quote unquote relationship for you to like grasp onto. Like if they're like cute together in a weird way. Yeah. Then at least your brain can kind of go, okay, I can see, I can sympathize with this, but they're not. Yeah. They're just creepy.
Yeah. I threw in a joke about this in White Knight a few times. I think it's the first volume where somebody asks if you think Croc is the big spoon or the little spoon, meaning when you're in bed snuggling, like is she kind of curled up behind him or vice versa? Mm-hmm. And the other character responds like, I don't want to think about it. Which, so basically I rip this off.
Yeah, put it on the list. I'm not really sure what else to really tell. You
can tell because we're finding hard things to talk about here.
Yeah.
Normally we're very inspired by these things, and this one's like, nope.
It's interesting because, especially with these two episodes back to back, I think the next one feels a lot more like an older TAS episode. And it's one of those situations where I was watching this one thinking like, man, how did they not get more story out of this? I know it's only a half an hour, but think of how many great episodes that have only been a half an hour. Or, think of other shows that have done great stuff in a half an hour. Like, there's so much in every episode of Rick and Morty, and it's the same length, but this just feels empty. And
Rick and Morty, like, it stretches time. It's amazing how much they cram into each episode.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And watching the next one, it's like, okay, well, this one feels more like they used the space that they had to kind of tell an interesting story. And this, I'm really kind of shocked at how much of a dud this is for me. Because like as I was watching it, I was like, I don't even really know if I want to draw anything from this because it's kind of boring.
So I managed to find one thing that piqued my interest. You have a scene where Batman and Batgirl go into their lair and they set off an explosive and they jump underwater, and there's a shot looking up at them underwater. Through the water, through the surface, you can see fire. So you get it's a kind of a classic action movie shot of the hero swimming as he's just, jumped out of the explosion and swam away. But I thought, how would I draw that in comic?
That's a really good question.
I've got tricks for water. Like water, especially when they're just floating around, it's just you're drawing a guy flying and there's bubbles around his face. If there's ripples on the surface, that's another texture. But fire beyond the textured surface, that's a tough one. I've never drawn that before. I don't even know what I would do, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like you could... it feels like one of those things where you could work it to death and realize the solution is probably a lot simpler than you think. Would it work if it was just... if you've got the storytelling leading into him jumping into the water, does the shot underwater really need to be more than just like bubbles and a silhouette with just orange in the background, to signify the fire over the top? I don't know, but I'm sure you could get really in the weeds on it.
I would put an object piercing the water so you can see where the water line is. Yeah. And I would have debris, like recognizable chunks of like bricks, for example, hitting the water. So you've got a few objects above them rippling. Because your brain will know, oh, that's a brick. Okay, I know what a brick looks like. Oh, it's hitting this weird line that's making circles. Oh, that's water. That's the surface of the water. I think that's what even without color, you could probably convey that. But again, how do you do the next step, which is fire? I think you just need to rely on the colorist, and I hate having to rely on the colorist for anything. I like to try to do as much as I can in-house, as it were. But yeah, that might be me calling the colorist and be like, can you help me? I can't draw fire and water at the same time.
You don't have to feel sad about it. It's a team sport here.
I know. I try to be old school, and I just hate. Yeah, even like rain effects. I just try to draw it with actually drawing lines and not have the colorist go in with a layer of water. Only one time I had to do that in Tokyo Ghost, and I hated it. I didn't like that Matt had to do it. I felt stupid that I forgot. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I
know artists do it all the time.
The last chapter of Bloody Hell there's a lot of rain. There's a lot of rain. And I did 98% of it on myself. And Russ, my colorist, I think threw a bit in there on top, just like layering wise for when he was doing his colors. But I sent him an email at some point. I was just asking him how it was going. He's like, "It's good. It's there's a lot of rain in these pages." I'm like, "Yep, that's what it was like."
Yeah, for them, they probably prefer. Dude, can you not just draw the rain on top of everything? Can you just let me? It's going to take me 2 seconds. Seriously. Like, I know that you're all punk rock and hardcore and you like to do it old school or whatever, but seriously, man, I don't want to be here another 8 hours rendering around your fucking raindrops.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you start putting splashes on stuff, that's like minute detail that needs to be attended to. Yeah. I'm sure it's a pain in the ass, but it looks good when it's all said and done.
It's it's hard to color people like you and me because we work against a colorist, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like normally you close your shapes. If you're drawing a guy's hand, you don't leave open lines. You don't break the surrounding line. You close them. So the colorist can select the hand shape and fill it in with skin color. And, some special effects or ripple effects, whatever they are just better off left to the colorist. I get that there are color-friendly artists in comics, and I know I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
So either people love working with me or they hate it because it's like, God, Sean didn't leave me anything fun. There's no big open shapes for me to render. Sean scribbles in everything. Like all I'm doing is flatting here, basically. Because Sean did most of the rendering that the pants and the legs need or whatever it is.
Yeah. There's an interesting variation of that stuff in Bloody Hell actually, because there's some stuff that requires a lot of fine-tuned detail, and then there's a few panels where it's like a long shot of a boat in the water surrounded by fog and like the suggestion of a mountain, and it's all atmospherics, and Russ just like when I drew that stuff, I was like, there's a possibility this isn't going to work, and then he knocked it out of the park. He made it all look fantastic. Yeah,
that's hard, leaving stuff open and hoping the colorist can make it work. He did
like
a great job. It's like letting go of the steering wheel and letting them drive, which it's hard for me to do. Yeah, but I'm glad that Russ. Yeah, what I saw of his pages looks really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finally seeing it all together in one place.
There's this colorist there's this colorist in South America named Marte Gracia. I think he's in Brazil. And super talented colorist. He did Marvel stuff, and he's one of the colorists that his style just jumps out at me because he renders the fuck out of clothing and wrinkles and stuff. Like he just finds shapes, and it's just amazing. And I asked him once to color. I was doing the Wolverine ABCs, I drew. I think it was like the letter W or something, where I drew Sabretooth, Logan, and Maverick, and I love his stuff, but seeing it on my stuff, it just didn't work as right because I render all my own wrinkles and clothes. Like there's nothing. The thing that I like about his art, I didn't allow him to do by the nature of how I draw.
Yeah.
But there's one elbow or kneecap that I didn't draw a lot of rendering on, and he rendered the fuck out of that because that's where he finally I get to do my thing. But I imagine he was kind of bummed out when he realized coloring me wouldn't allow him to do his shtick, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. It's always interesting to see how certain colorists work better or worse on different artists and whatnot, because it takes more consideration than I think a lot of people really give it credit for.
Oh yeah,
matching.
It can make or break what you did too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
In a way, you want it to be like it should feel like the camera. The mentality when you're shooting a movie, you don't want people to be aware of the camera. If they're not aware of the camera, then you've done your job. So in the colorists, I've heard them say that too. If you're too focused on colors, then they haven't done their job. It shouldn't even stand out. It should just tell the story, and you shouldn't make a giant impact per se.
Yeah, yeah. I've had to learn to let it go a little bit when it comes to colors over the years, because I don't know if you think this way, but when I'm sure you do, because we both work in black and white. But like I'm not necessarily thinking about color as I'm doing it. I'm more focused on I'm thinking about the coloring process. Like I know that's going to happen, but I'm not super thinking about like palette choices and stuff, because I'm drawing for black and white. Black and white is the way that I prefer it to look. And so early on when I was working, I would get these colors back and I would just be like, oh, this is not what I like. It's just, I don't know what I was thinking about, but it's not this. And there's a certain level of control you do have to let go of, where it's like, okay, I mean, it looks good. It's not what I was thinking, but it works. So let's just go with it. The black and white version is going to be my version. The color version is going to be everybody else's.
Yeah, I do try to think about that stuff. Like, if I'm drawing fire in a forest, you've got red and green, which can be, if you're not careful, it could look like Christmas colors. Or you have a character who's in red and he's against the green background. I'll try to be aware, like, all right, if I put his shoulder pad in the camera, half of this panel is going to be red, and everything in the background is going to be green. So I should either show more of his shoulder and less of the green, or the other way. Like I try to be aware of what colors are going to be touching which spots, and there's no way to do it perfectly. Like you're going to have color conflicts, but I do try to be aware to make the colorist's job easier. So he's like, man, you drew a green character right in front of the green tree in the background. Like, why couldn't you move him over in front of the brown building so the greens wouldn't clash?
Yeah. Well, that's why you put enough lighting on him that you can be like, well, maybe there's like a blue light coming in from the side that's going to change the color of that green to a little bit more.
Yeah. I will say too, this is an artist tip. When you're designing a character, he or she should look good from the full body shot. But I think you should also pay particular attention to his head, neck, and shoulders. Because when you start doing talking heads panels, inevitably you're going to have a close-up of a guy talking. There should be some details on him that look cool. So don't design the fuck out of his shoulders. Don't design the fuck out of his belt. Try to draw something around his chest and neck that would also look cool for those inevitable shots. Like, an easy one is like if a guy's wearing a suit, well, give him an interesting tie. So even when you're doing a close-up of him talking, you're not just drawing a guy, like a white guy who's flesh with a brown suit. That's boring. There's nothing there to grab you. There's no cool color there. But if he's wearing a really interesting tie, you can get a peek of the top of the tie, and now you've got an interesting colored panel. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Yeah. Especially for me, I'm terrible. That's one of the things that I have yet to really get a grasp on that I'm happy with is character design. Every time I have to design characters, I'm like, this'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as
we managed to get more out of this episode than we thought.
I know, yeah. As far as drawing stuff for this one, I kind of similarly, the only thing that I could really grasp onto was their lair was kind of cool with that giant teddy bear and stuff. Apparently Baby Doll used all the money she saved from working at the hotel to swing by the brand manager's place to get some electroshock dart guns and exploding alligator toys and a giant teddy bear and whatnot. And she didn't have that much money, so all she could afford was the sewer lair. Not many villains want the sewer lair, but what Brandon didn't know is that's exactly what she wanted because she was shacking up with Killer Croc. So worked out for everybody.
The relationship with the brand manager and Killer Croc has always been tenuous because he doesn't have many things that he needs. He's just a guy who's shaped like an alligator. And the brand manager is like stocking up on one day the alligator's going to need some cool alligator shit. But he's not walking into the store and buying anything. So there's sort of like this weird standoff between the two of them.
Yeah, every time he walks in, Brandon gets excited, but then Croc's like, "Do you have pants?" And Brandon's like, "All you want is pants? You came to me for pants.
Get pants anywhere." Yeah, you have my size.
I'm sorry. You
want alligator pants? I've been saving up alligator pants. Like, please let me help you. I'll give you some stuff for free.
Pants and a rope.
I can't have you walk out of here without. People expect certain things from me. You and I are a natural pair.
It makes me look terrible if you come in here and you just leave with another pair of awful pants.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, if Killer Croc was wearing like alligator skin pants, isn't that like you and me wearing a human flesh suit?
Yes, it would be very much like that. Yeah, yeah. Very, very different character.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't go in that direction.
Yeah, luckily, snakeskin is extremely hard to animate. So,
yeah,
I think that's gonna do it for this one. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about.
I'm debating between a 1 or a 2 on this one.
Yeah, I don't think I would go 1. I think I'd go 2 because it's like it's. I don't think it's a fairly. It's a middling episode with a good concept, but like they don't do enough.
Yeah.
Usually, I can find the upside of those kind of episodes to give it at least a 3, but it feels like they totally whiff on it on this one in a way that is disappointing.
Yeah, and the nuclear threat at the end is just like a yawn. I don't even care. Like, I should care that Gotham's about to be destroyed, but like I actually care more when the Firefly in the next episode dumps all this like napalm into the sewers and he's going to light it all on fire. Yeah, that actually seemed more like, oh, okay, that's bad.
Whether or not that's going to work is another question, but the fact that the idea is bad. Yeah, and it's the fact that they go back to the well of let's have Batgirl defuse a bomb off screen. It just feels really lazy, and it feels like did they like have more commercials or something with these? Did they have to cut 5 minutes out of the script because they just seem so weirdly truncated?
Yeah,
because in this one, Killer Croc gets blasted by a steam pipe, and then
all right, so
that's it.
Explain that ending to me. I forgot about that. Did he do it? Did he pull the pipe knowing it was going to defuse the bomb or something? Was he trying to act heroic? Like, what was his plan for grabbing that pipe?
I think he wanted to hit Batman with the pipe. And he didn't know that was a bad pipe to touch? Yeah, I guess he didn't know it was a steam pipe or something. And Batman responds as though he's reaching for the trigger to blow the city up. He's like, Croc, no! And then it just sprays him in the face with water and he falls over. Yeah, the end. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that scene is a 1. That's for sure. The only other thing to mention in this one is both characters have new voices this time around. Baby Doll went from Alison LaPlaca to Lorraine Newman, former SNL cast member from the original group there. And Killer Croc goes from Aaron Kincaid to Brooks Gardner, who is a name I do not recognize. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they didn't just have Tara Strong do this, because this seems like right up her alley of a character she could probably do really well. But I think this might have been early enough in her career where she wasn't the go-to for literally every character yet. So, but that makes sense. I think that's going to do it for Love is a Croc. This episode is a crock. God. Am I right? Yeah. Ho. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with Torch Song.
My cheeks are hot, my lips are burning, the flames of love dance in my eyes. I've got just one, that's word of warning. Play with me and you play with fire, fire, fire. Play
Torch Song, written by Rich Fogel, directed by Kurt Gaeta. In this one, a lovelorn pyrotechnic engineer, Garfield Linz, gets dumped by a big-time singer named Cassidy. Linz becomes the supervillain, the Firefly, bent on burning the woman who burned him. This is the first appearance of Firefly, who is I had never really looked up his history. It's pretty interesting. I
don't know anything about it.
It's interesting because it's silly. In pre-crisis DC continuity, Garfield Linz was a down-and-out special effects expert whose plan to rob a theater by faking a fire was foiled by Batman and Robin. As Linz fled the scene, Batman mistook a distant Firefly for Linz's lit cigarette and gave chase in the wrong direction. So, let that sink in. Batman ran after a Firefly because he thought it was a cigarette ember. Because Batman is an idiot. Linz saw this as a sign of fate and became the Firefly, a costume criminal who utilized various lighting effects and optical illusions during heists. So he was basically like shitty Mysterio originally. And I don't know how you have a character called Firefly whose deal isn't fire stuff. Yeah. It seems like it's a longer walk to get to Firefly, the disgraced optical illusion lighting effects technician, than it does Firefly, the arsonist. But after Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was reimagined as a much darker and more violent character, with a backstory involving abusive parents and being an orphan and becoming
another orphan in Gotham.
Becoming a criminal, and he started doing arson during his robberies, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah,
where did he get the jetpack?
He was special at the brand manager's place, I guess.
See, I get him. He's a
you mean like
pyrotechnic guy.
You mean like conceptually, or like in the episode?
Both. Okay. But let's talk about the episode. I get him having a fire gun. I can see a special effects guy rigging that, or grabbing a prop that he had that did that. I'll even give the fire sword a pass. But jet propulsion and aerodynamics, that's a whole other ballgame right there. I want to know how the hell I thought they were going to have some explanation of I don't even know what you would say. They just sort of dismiss it. Whatever. He's a bad guy now, and bad guys get jetpacks.
Right. Yeah.
What do you want?
There's no real explanation of anything for him. He works for Cassidy, and he likes fire. Is he her special effects guy? Is that the deal? I think I might have missed that, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if not, it makes sense if that's the case. But yeah.
She fires him at the beginning and says, "This will be your last concert." So seeing this guy, your life is in his hands. You pissed him off right before you went on stage. I mean, not a good plan.
Yeah. He knows where the fireballs are going to come up.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say she deserved it, but
I would hope not. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's moves like this are kind of where the idea of the brand manager came from, where it's
that would be Plan manager's what do you feel about jetpacks?
Yeah,
you got the fire. Why not the fly part? It seems like you need some kind of. I can't do the voice. I'm waiting for you to jump in here.
You want to be Firefly, you got to have the fly part. You can't just be walking around in Chuck Taylor All Stars. You got to look the part.
I did notice his sneakers were pretty detailed for a cartoon.
Firefly, you're halfway there. That's why you come to me for the other part. You got the name. It works. You got the gimmick. But what you need is a highly combustible, uncontrollable movement device that you should have no idea how to use, but you use very well.
What do you think about Batman's fire suit?
It's a cool toy, but I mean, I'm watching this going he puts on the fire suit and then I guess he can't move. Because he's just walking down this stairway and he's just getting pelted by fire shit, and it's this shouldn't be this shouldn't take over from the fact that you can move quickly in our Batman.
He does some he does some maneuver. He's still acrobatic in that suit. There's some shots where it doesn't seem like it's not like the Iron Man 1 suit.
No. It did. That whole thing did feel to me like Alfred knew he had to use the suit so they could write it off on the taxes by the end of the tax year or something, because it seems like more work than it's worth, honestly.
For me, it was like, oh, they need more toys. Okay.
Right.
And did I even see that action figure? It must have been out there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a cool look. It's like it's kind of Batman Beyond-y, and I think if I remember correctly, the coloring was blue, possibly gray. I can't remember which. It was black and either blue or gray. I forget.
In this one, it was black and gray.
Oh, okay. So I assume that's what the toy was.
I don't know if it was blue in the cartoon. I didn't love it. You had these big, lazy gauntlets and shin pads or whatever. It's just like when a little kid starts, I'm going to make up a superhero. This is generally what it comes up with. And it's like, nice job, kid, but you suck and you shouldn't be drawing.
The toy, they did do a toy of it in the new series of toys that they did the last couple of years, and it is blue. It's black and like a grayish blue, kind of like Mr. Freeze colored, sort of. I'll send you the picture. It actually looks better as a toy, I think, than it does in the episode.
Yeah, much like my Asbat action figure.
So I'm a little bit surprised that you didn't really like that, because it seems like the kind of stripped back sort of design that you would like.
Yeah, it's just those lazy gauntlets and shin pads. I like the Mr. Freeze gun. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, I was trying to parse out in the IMDb trivia, it mentions it as being a gas gun. That's incorrect. That looks like Mr. Freeze's gun, but when I saw it, it's like, oh, I mean, it would make sense if it was Mr. Freeze's gun, because you know, fire, ice. Although he does he does have that gel that can burn through ice.
Yeah, it's not going to be. I guess Batman didn't see that part.
Overall, I like this episode a lot more than the last one. I think it's an interesting introduction for Firefly. Firefly is legitimately creepy in this, in his obsession with Cassidy and the way that he talks to her. His plan is a little bit too stock villainy for me, where like you're saying, he's just this guy who now is a supervillain, and now along with his new suit and jetpack, he has a very super villainy plan that he's going to pump the water supply full of this anything burns chemical and then burn the entire city down. I don't know. Like I like it. I like it a lot more in scenes where, like when Batman and Batgirl go to his apartment and the building catches, like they set off a, not entirely dissimilar to the last episode actually, where they set off a trigger and his building explodes. I thought that was really cool. I would have loved to have seen like a whole sequence of that in the burning building and stuff, where they had to figure out how to get out and whatnot.
But he blew up the bottom floor when they're on the top floor. Like, I don't see why would you do that? You just killed all your neighbors.
Yeah,
Batman.
It looked like it was an abandoned building because the bottom floor was like boarded up. So I assume it was like he was going to take the whole building down if he set the bomb off, kind of thing.
You know, I
Come on, you're from New Hampshire. If you start a fire, you don't start at the top, you start at the bottom.
I didn't know if he was trying to crush the building or vaporize them instantly.
Oh, sure.
If you're trying to vaporize them instantly, you would just blow up that floor. But yeah, I was going to say, like, I really like the Firefly suit. To me, it's like, you know, the Rocketeer in some ways, which I think is cool. And when I saw that it was this episode, I got kind of excited. But as I was watching it, I'm just like, this does not hold up like I remember. To skip to the end, I'm going to go a 3 on this. And I started thinking about what I would do to move it up to a 4. And I think for me, the very end, when Cassidy and her manager are getting dinner, and suddenly the waiter brings by a plate and lights it. It's like flambe, whatever, pudding flambe. And she sees the fire, and you can tell like it's changed her, like she's startled by it. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Why not? I would have actually made her a little bit more of a bitch to him. And so she's sort of like having to deal with the consequences of how she treated somebody. Like, even though this guy is a villain who tried to take her life, I would make him more justified in being pissed at her. You know, like she used him somehow and she thought she could get away with it because she's a superstar now. But in this final scene, we see that she's affected forever by fire. And her whole thing on stage is fire everything. So
Right.
I don't know. I thought that having her be more of a jerk to him at the beginning, not to empathize with this guy a little bit more, might have helped. Yeah, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I really liked that scene at the end. It reminded me of the end of. Do you remember the movie Misery with James Caan?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, there's a moment at the end after he's escaped from being held prisoner by Annie Wilkes and having his legs broken and stuff, where he's at dinner with his manager, and they do a very similar thing where I think the waitress comes over and he looks up and the waitress is Annie, or there's some sort of trigger that triggers this like PTSD that he had from the experience, and it's really effective. Mm-hmm. And I think I like that here because very rarely in this show do you get that kind of coda or epilogue moment where you see that any of this has affected anybody in any way, Yeah. It's generally it's over. Like the last episode, caught the bad guy, end of the episode. This one, they catch the bad guy, but you get to see how menacing this guy actually was, which I think is really effective.
Yeah. Are you going to go 4 on this one, you think?
I don't know.
I mean, so he started off wanting to just kill her, and then he sort of kidnapped her, so his motivation just kept changing.
Yeah, I don't think I would go 4 because if we're looking at this in the grand scheme of the entire series, I don't think this is a 4. I think it's a good, like, solid down the middle episode. It's a good introduction of a new villain, even if his motivations are a little bit wonky. But I don't think it's a must see. Yeah. Even though I do like the villain. So I think I would probably go 3 on it.
Yeah.
Because
I want to like it more, but they could have done a bit more with them. I like the suit a lot. That's why it's not a 2.
Yeah. I think if they leaned into, like we, for our horror show, horror podcast, Rotten Horror Picture Show, we just covered The Invisible Man from 2020. And the genius of that movie is it took the concept and extrapolated it out into this really effective story about a woman escaping from a abusive relationship, and how the Invisible Man is, while there is actually a man who is invisible causing havoc, there is also the kind of flip side metaphorical reading of it where it's this person is always present even after she's escaped, kind of thing. And it's always the stuff that he does is always affecting her, even if she can't actually see him. And I feel like they could have, if this was less of a kid's show, I think you could do a lot more with that, where his thing is a lot more malicious towards her than they do. Because it's a weird toss up, because I think you can go either way, because like you're saying, her character in the show is not the best person. She's a jerk to him. She's kind of weirdly jerky and sexual to Batman when Batman shows up. Like, she's not presented as a super sympathetic character. So I think you could go that way and make her even less so. Or I think you could go the other way and make her more of someone who is actively being is the result of a more like abusive relationship kind of thing, and Firefly is the embodiment of that.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. So for our Jason Todd book, you kind of had Firefly as the baddie, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love that idea, but the artist we got, unfortunately, had done some Firefly work already in the past year. Like he already did like a fresh redesign of the character in the main line. So we kind of felt it was better to just give him somebody new, not have him repeat himself.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Like maybe because we had a bit in Todd where there's like possibly a destroyed neighborhood in Backport or whatever. Mm-hmm. So Firefly makes sense. But I don't know if it matters to. Maybe we should have just had him use Firefly. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's. I think it works either way. given what his role in the story is ultimately going to be. Firefly makes more sense from a timeline standpoint, I think. But as far as it's the difference between a lot of fire effects and a lot of ground destroying effects. So I guess it kind of depends on where you fall about that action wise. But
well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm thinking like, is a reader of White Knight going to know that, oh yeah, I like this artist, but didn't he just draw Firefly? Like, is that going to be a thing in the reader's head that might give them pause? And maybe I'm reading into it too much. But my other thing was asking the artist, what do you want to do? He seemed more interested in not drawing Firefly again. So for the sake of, pleasing the group, I'm like, all right, we can use somebody else. So do you want to name the character that we're using instead?
Sure, yeah. We're actually using Shriek, the Batman Beyond villain.
Yeah. And if we're getting into the Beyond-ish timeline, then I feel like using this 48-pager or whatever as showing the time that's passed between Jason Todd then and now, it sort of makes sense that you would start seeing these Beyond villains sort of start appearing,
Yeah.
Plus, you got a bunch of destruction and stuff. And the artist we have is very digital artist, which is cool. And he's really good with those like special effects. All the stuff that I was complaining about colorists doing, this guy is like the opposite. But it doesn't matter because it looks really good, and I'm happy to have him.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually thinking about it the other day because I was, talk about things that doesn't really matter. I was like, well, if this is going to be mostly in the past, does Shriek make sense because he's a future villain? But then it occurred to me, I was like, well, this takes place in the past mostly. We could use literally any villain because it takes place before they all die.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah, you could have resurrected somebody.
Yeah, but I think Shriek is probably the best way to go.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you add, not that we're going off on a tangent, but I guess we already have. As soon as you add, for the story that we're telling, I think as soon as you add someone who's like a bigger name, that sort of takes the reins a bit. And that's not really what we're going for. We're focusing more on the Jason Todd story, less on the villain. And if the Riddler shows up, it's like, well, the Riddler deserves a bigger platform than this.
Yeah, like the artist suggested Deathstroke, and I thought, man, that's got to be cool. I like Deathstroke's look a lot. And then you nixed it because you're like, he's going to take a lot of oxygen. It's going to take the air out of the room in a way. Like, I think we need a low-level version that won't hijack the story because, Deathstroke is such a presence that you can't just throw him into a story without some more, without some more context.
Right.
If you're going to do Deathstroke and White Knight, then do a spin-off series, Deathstroke, White Knight, and make it 4 issues. Like, that's the right way to handle Deathstroke. You don't just toss him into a story like this.
Right, yeah. Like, if you wanted to do a Nightwing spin-off or something, Deathstroke would be great to use in that, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
So we want sea level and below for this story.
Yeah. Man, I'm going through the notes that you gave me for my script, and I was flattered that you were, so the stuff I'm doing for Beyond the White Knight, there's a lot of things I have to get through in the story. And from the beginning, Clay was like, man, you got a lot of characters here. You got a lot of stuff you want to cover, and you only have 8 issues to do it. Like, you were definitely hesitant to see if there was a way for me to get all of this in without it feeling crammed, which is definitely a concern that I shared. But when I got your notes back to say, like, I am impressed that you managed to fit all of this stuff into this story so far.
Yeah, I hope that didn't come off as a backhanded compliment because I meant it.
No.
I meant it honestly. That when I read through the outline that you sent me, I was like, this works a lot better than I thought it was going to. Because like you said, there's so much stuff going on. You've got so much. I hesitate to tell you this. Maybe I'll tell you this off air if I tell you at all. But there was one big note I was going to give you that I didn't because I knew there was no point in me giving it to you because it was kind of like a concept breaking note. And it's not even worth thinking about, I don't think. But it was one of those things where it's like there's a lot going on here. Could it be slimmed down? Unfortunately, the way I think to slim it down is kind of defeats the purpose of doing the story. So let's not do that. So,
which character would you cut out?
Terry McGinnis.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, like I wrote this like long paragraph explaining, like I started with like, I don't even know if I should tell you this because I know you're not going to do it because it defeats the purpose of doing Batman Beyond. And then I wrote it out and I was like, it's not even worth taking the time because it's...
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. And that occurred to me as well. If Batman's chasing down this guy who's stolen a Beyond suit, maybe we don't reveal who it is until the very end. You know, we'll have it be Terry, but you don't realize it's Terry. And instead, I flesh out Terry. Like in issue 2, I open it up with a flashback and Terry, this and that. And I felt like if you're going to do Batman Beyond and him pass the torch, then you need to have Terry McGinnis.
Right.
Like, won't readers get pissed
Right.
if you make them read 8 issues and Terry isn't in it? Aren't they going to revolt?
Yeah.
But he does take up a lot of extra space. And I know, like, if I wanted to cut 20% of it out and leave myself more room for sexy splash pages, Terry is first on the chopping block. But like branding wise, I need him.
Exactly.
Don't I?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because it's like what I was looking at the story you're trying to tell, and I'm like, there is so much that's already like primed to go with this stuff that these themes that you're talking about without adding Terry McGinnis into the mix. Like I think there's a way you could still do everything that is without Terry, but gets everything else done that would be more like more of a piece with everything that came before. But then you're losing Terry McGinnis, and I feel like that's people are, as soon as you put Beyond in the title, it's like that's what people are coming to see, right?
You need every story has a list of 10 things that you need. I forget, there was a director that said this. No, it was a editor, a guy, really tall guy. He was editing a Marvel for a while.
Jim Shooter,
yeah. He said once, he was at a convention, he goes, every Spider-Man story, I think he was Spider-Man, you need to have a handful of things. They need to see a spider bite Peter Parker. He needs to generally be a kid. He kind of has to be single. Like, you can do what you want with the characters, but there's 10 commandments of Spider-Man that you just can't break. And there's 10 commandments for every character, like Batman. Like, you just have to check these boxes. You can do whatever you want outside, but these boxes have to be checked.
Right.
And if you don't check one, you better find a good reason why. And I never forgot that. But yeah, as far as this example with Batman Beyond, like, if I'm going to do a thing about Beyond, I'm pretty sure it has to be Terry McGinnis. Like, storytelling wise, I agree with you, but marketing wise, But no, it's funny. I thought the same thing too.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that a reader wants to know, how does Batman escape from jail? He wants to know, how did Barbara become a cop and have a falling out with Dick? They want to know about, what's Harley doing with these twins or whatever? Like, there's so many things that people want to know. And then you introduce a brand new character. It's like, I don't want to read about a new guy. I want to see these other things get fleshed out. But it is Terry McGinnis. So yeah, I guess I'm willing to, read about Terry for a little bit. The trick is to make him as compelling, and because he has to make up for lost time, because all these other characters have a history in this universe now, whereas Terry's brand new. So, I started out with like, maybe he starts out at a cemetery or something. That's very Batman. And I'm like, that's like too Batman. But I was trying to find a way to really pump him up quick to make him as interesting as the other scenes are,
Yeah.
And same thing with Powers too. He's such a sort of one-dimensional character in Batman Beyond. I really wanted to give him more, make him more dynamic and relatable. Even though he's the villain, like, the thing that I think I do well with White Knight is even the villains are empathetic. Like, you don't 100% hate the villains. You kind of agree with them a little bit. And you don't 100% love the heroes. You kind of disagree with them a little bit. Like, Batman White Knight is very gray in a way. Like, none of the characters are 100% good or bad, which is what I think is interesting. So I wanted to find a way to make Derek Powers a little bit more dynamic,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's gonna.
So spoilers, by the way. Sorry.
That's all right. It's vague enough at this point that I don't think it's gonna ruin anything for either story.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. There's two big ones I don't want to spoil, and I think you know what they are. I was looking at the numbers for 2017 when Batman Volume 1 came out, and we had issue 1 went through 4 printings. Our numbers dropped a little bit for issue 2, and then they went up again for issue 3. And usually when you're a comic book shop, you have to order 3 months out. So by the time they had to order issue 3, they looked and realized, oh shit, issue 1 and 2, so we better up our orders. And most of the shops increased their orders by 10% on this book.
That's awesome.
And the reason that happened is you need really good endings on your book. And that series, every final page was like, oh my God, I need to get the next one. And doing that actually helped correct the sales by bringing them back up. And that's when like word of mouth caught on. And with Curse of the White Knight, I'm happy with that book, but there is not a cliffhanger ending as much in the first 2 issues. And I think that we didn't get that boost that we normally would have gotten. So for this series, I'm trying to make issue 1 as a killer ending, issue 2 as a killer ending, and then issue 3 starts to calm down a little bit. Like it's still a cliffhanger, but it's not as, I'm not playing all my cards at once.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
But getting the first 2 in there, like if any reader was questioning at all whether they should have waited for the trade or bought the floppies, when they get to the last pages of these first few issues, they will be glad that they are reading it right now.
Yeah.
This is my thinking.
Well, I mean, it's sound reasoning, I would say.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. My editor complains a lot about writers who don't write cliffhanger endings.
Right.
Like it's just something that, or write a page turn thing. At the end of each page, you have a reason to want to keep flipping. Like writers just don't think that way for some reason.
I think, and not to send this down a whole nother rabbit hole, but I bet we could probably talk about this for a while. But I feel like the decompressed storytelling that comics has turned into in the past 20 years or so has done a lot to that. Because kind of like the way that TV works now, when you start thinking of these stories as on TV, they always say, oh, this isn't a television show, it's a 10-hour movie that we broke into 10 spots. A lot of times that kind of storytelling lends itself to fewer page turn, quote unquote, page turn moments that you get at the end of each episode.
Right.
So it feels a little bit like meandering, and it doesn't leave you with that much of a hook to get you back into the story. There's the flip side of that, which is like the Walking Dead version, which is a bunch of garbage for an episode and then one really important thing to get you to come back for the next episode and sit through more garbage, and then another crazy thing happens. So there's there's 2 extremes to it. But I think, one of the things that can get lost in comic stories these days, where there's so many long-term stories, like there's a lot fewer like 2 or 4 issue stories happening. It's a lot of like we're doing 12 issues. It's going to be this year-long arc in X, Y, and Z. You can kind of forget, I think, that you need to have beats like that to keep people coming back. Because
especially now with all the competition out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're not ending your issue with some sort of spike, some sort of dopamine spike, then I don't really know what to tell you. That's kind of basic.
Like your reader isn't just buying Batman. You can't just expect them to stick around because they like Batman and Batman's exciting enough. Like I imagine my reader is sitting reading a comic, and next to him is a PlayStation and a Nintendo Switch.
Right.
And his laptop and his phone and these other things that he could easily be doing the minute he puts down my comic. And my goal is to get him or her to say, screw that, I need to go read issue 2. Like I'm competing against these other media that have sound, it's fun, it's engaging, it's less expensive than comics in some ways, certainly some Steam games. That's what we're up against. So I imagine like I need to hold this guy's attention as long as I can. And I feel like it's a losing battle because eventually, PlayStation is going to win, or big Marvel movie or Star Wars movie is going to win. But if I can hold his attention for a little while and really give him a reason, like, man, I was going to spend $5 on another Steam game, but I think I'm going to buy the next issue of this comic. Like it's a lofty goal and it's almost fucking impossible now because people are so distracted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't take it for granted that they're necessarily going to stick around.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned this before, but when I was doing my my webcomic Dead Meat, I kind of started thinking about things down to the single page, because it's like I was uploading a page a week on the website, and I started thinking, I was like, man, if you're doing a page a week, you can't. Not only do you have to think about story cliffhangers at the end of a chapter, but you need to basically think of every page as its own mini story that ends in a place that it's going to make people want to turn the page or make them want to come back next week for the next installment. And it's really, I mean, that's like a minute level of it that gets really difficult. That's why you end up having like the Phantom comic in the newspaper where it's like 2 panels that don't make any sense because it's paying off something that happened last week and setting up something that's going to happen next week in the span of 2 small boxes. But it's like you have to think about your story on a minute level like that sometimes in order to really maximize it. You can get too into the weeds. Like it's really difficult to do that when you're doing like a graphic novel or at some points even a single issue. It's like, all right, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of thinking about what's going to happen and how to make sure it doesn't feel hacky where it's like every page doesn't end with someone going, look out, or something like that. Or somebody getting hit with something from off screen or some hacky shit like that.
Or what I do is with dialogue, I'll have the last panel be a character asking a question.
Oh, sure.
And it won't be answered until panel 1 of the next page. If I can do that in any way, I usually try.
Yeah, that's
or
smart.
Have a lookout or a cliffhanger suspense. Every single page, there is a way to do that. I'm convinced. Like it's not always going to be easy to find those solutions, but you have to try.
Right. And
people say they liked White Knight because I was writing for the issues and not writing for the trade. I don't know what writers out there like. Does that mean you're allowed to be boring for a bunch of issues before there's a payoff? Because like that doesn't make sense to me these days, especially with people's shorter attention spans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, wouldn't you always be writing for the issues? And can't you do both at the same time? By the way, I mean you're basically writing a chapter at a time. Don't you want people to be anxious to get to the next chapter? I mean, I don't get what that mentality is, and I know a lot of huge writers who are really well known, like Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman. They would probably disagree with me and say, you don't always have to have a cliffhanger ending. Sometimes a slow burn and letting readers earn it is a better payoff. Like maybe they're right. I'm just going for the cheap and next week type of gag. I don't, like I don't have security in my own writing or something.
I don't think it has to be like a cliffhanger, like a car going off a literal cliff or anything. But I think there's got to be something there that, like, whether it's a new idea or a question, like you're saying, or something that just gives you that spike to be like, ooh, yeah, I'd like to know what this is going to mean.
Yeah. I mean, it seems fucking obvious to me, but there's a lot of writers who disagree with that. So
yeah, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on your style.
Well, the thing is, too, you and I approach writing from a screenplay sort of mentality where you generally have 90 minutes to tell a movie. We go with the 3-act structure. You have this turn in act 1 where there's the initial incident and whatever. Like, we generally think of movies and we generally think of stories through the lens of movies. Whereas I think a guy like Neil Gaiman thinks of prose.
Sure. Yeah.
So he's not as much into cliffhangers and stuff because he's going to write 600 pages. He doesn't need to think about people are committed to that book already.
Right.
Like this, what are they going to do? Make you every single fucking page is going to have a thing,
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there's no, neither one of those ways is wrong because he's a very successful comic book writer. So
true. Yeah. He's wrong and I'm right.
Of course.
I agree completely.
Of course, yes.
Hey, sort of going off a tangent again. What do you think about creators using comics to leapfrog into Hollywood? Do you think that a lot of creators are trying to get to Hollywood with comics, or do you think that they want that cap in their feather? And what do you think the motivation is when you hear about creators trying to get into Hollywood?
Making more money, because
it's just money.
It seems like, I mean, if you're a writer and you're a comic book writer, what's the next step? Where do you go from there? Do you stay in comics, or do you try to move up to a different thing? Where you could do screenplay writing, or maybe writing for TV or something. I feel like it doesn't happen that often. Frankly, I think it happens the other way a lot. I think a lot of times people come from movies to comics, but the number of comic book writers I can think of that started writing movies and TV, I can count on one hand, basically.
Right. I think that there's an illusion of grandeur going on here. And I know I sound jaded, but I've gone through the Hollywood machine twice, maybe even a third time coming up now, where I said this before, but this all takes place in California, where I'm not at, and I don't want to get on a flight and try to control my properties. They pay for these things. They own it. They tell me I can try to get into a meeting where they're going to tell me to go fuck myself. That's just how it works. That's the contract I signed. That's what it means to get paid for an option. That's what it means to take a buyout or whatever it is. And I realized I can't control things that happen in Hollywood. I can't control when the president of NBC quits and the new guy comes in. He decides just to flush everything down the toilet that the previous guy had.
Right.
I can't control when an actor has a baby and can't be committed to a project anymore. And I'm not necessarily a control freak. It's just that I can't think about that stuff. I can't think about red carpet events. I can't think about the schmoozing or the fame or the ego, whatever it is. Like, I'm a guy who's good at sitting alone in a room and putting out projects. And like, for me, publishing is where it's at. If they make a Hollywood thing out of one of my IPs, great. But it's not really what I'm gunning for. Mm-hmm. And my sense is a lot of creators are not like me and maybe not like you. They are very much, they have eyes on Hollywood, and it's not just about money. I think it's about fame and success and like being able to like stand on a movie set of a book that you wrote is like, you know, on their bucket list or something. I think there's a big ego motive going on too. And I just feel like it's a little delusional, don't you think? I mean, how many of us, like you said, have actually made it? You know, even Mike Mignola, who had Hellboy movies, like, you know, I think he's wired like me. He doesn't want to get involved with that shit either. Mm-hmm. Like, he's happy to kind of control it, but he knows what it is, you know?
Hey, man, don't sell me short. I'm looking to sell out at the first possibility.
Yeah.
No. Well, I mean, think about it. I think, yeah, that might be an element to it. But if you think of it like, look at it from an artist standpoint, if someone's drawing comics, making however many dollars doing that, and then they get some storyboard jobs, which pays twice as much for half as amount of work or something. You know, it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fame thing. It could just be a, what's the next step in advancing my career? How do I work smarter, not harder kind of thing, you know? Not that there's anything easy about doing storyboards or writing movies, because it's clearly very hard, but.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Todd McFarlane about this once, and I said, like, Todd, what am I doing wrong? Like, I feel like I've made the pretty great decisions in my career. I don't regret many moves, and I've obviously sort of done a lot and made it to the top in some ways. And I said, but if you had to look back on what I've done, is there anything I missed? Like, what did I, you know, any mistakes I made or whatever? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, even if I'm doing everything right, I still want to know what, you know. And he said, your problem is that you're at the top of the ceiling in comics. Right. Like, there's a limited ceiling, and you're at it. So if you want to get bigger, you have to get outside of comics.
Right.
Which is why I got into movies and action figures and stuff like that. It's like, it's a very small. The bar is not that high in comics. You know, once you bump your head, you know, what do you expect? This is it, kid. You know. So if you want more out of this, then you need to start looking elsewhere.
Yeah. Like, would you continue to draw comics if you could get paid the same amount that you get to draw Batman, maybe slightly more, to do storyboards or concept art for movies that would be like maybe 3/4 the amount of work?
No, I'd rather do what I'm doing.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Because I can write this. I'm not writing those scripts.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
I'm in a project I don't like. No one sees my work at that point.
Yeah.
You don't get appreciated the same way.
So you do want the fame, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, is there a non-arrogant way for me to say? I mean, I say a lot of arrogant things on this podcast already.
Now you're drifting into Garth from Wayne's World territory, where they do the product placement bit where he's sitting there in the Reebok suit and he's like, some people just, you know, don't have any credibility and just sell out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
I because I'm off social media now, I feel very disconnected from comics. Sure. So I'm not sure if there's a lot of creators who sincerely want to get into Hollywood, or if they're all just fooling themselves, or maybe most of them are low key like us. You know? I think it's one of those things where, like, if it's not, I don't think it's something people don't want to do, because I mean, like I said, it probably means a pay bump in some sense. It means a visibility bump, which hopefully translates into better sales or more work or something in whatever you're doing, even though that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, it is. I don't think it should be shunned, but yeah, I don't know if it's something that it.
Yeah.
Like, I would be lying if I said I wouldn't be thrilled if something I did was turned into a movie, or a TV show or whatever. But I don't. That's not for me anyway. The end game. That's not why I do what I'm doing. And I do wonder if you do it that way, if you're kind of chasing a dragon you're never going to catch. You just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've got screenwriters. One of the options we have is I don't think this one's been announced, but the writer is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna definitely write the script for this movie, and I'm just like, yeah, the first draft.
Yeah,
but don't you know they don't care about comic book writers or artists, by the way.
Sure.
They want the IP.
Sure.
Like, we're lucky to be this far. I don't see them. They're going to bring in real screenwriters who have a track record that, people, they need to show the producers, the money people, hey, here's a big name who wrote this movie. Here's the sales of that movie. So we have that guy write this movie. We're going to get our investment back. You don't just go, well, the guy who wrote the comic really wants to write it, so we should just give it to him. I mean, it would mean a lot to him because they're going to say, okay, but what is he going to sell? Like, I mean, it just doesn't make there. And as you know, there's like 20 different writers for every script generally anyway, as they get passed around and script doctored or whatever it is. The idea of a comic book writer thinking that Hollywood is actually going to let him write the final version of a screenplay is insane to me. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, see, I think the secret is the real money, the real goal is if they make a movie out of your comic. It makes a lot of money, but it's also terrible because that way you get more press by just trashing it all the time. So you're still cashing the checks you're getting from the royalties because it made $200 million at the box office or whatever. But you're also online going like, this was garbage. You all guys are all right to think so. Let me tell you all the reasons why it was garbage. Listen, that's what I'm looking forward to. I could podcast for the next 25 years of my life if I got to do that.
Yeah.
Finally get to wreck my own project instead of somebody else's.
If they made a Bloody Hell movie and you thought it was terrible, would you say it, or would you just play the game for a bit?
I honestly don't know. I think after a certain point I would stop playing the game, but until it came out, I would probably push it as much as I could.
Yeah,
you don't want to tell people not to go. I always wondered that all these press tours that anybody who's in any movie does. There's always a part of me after I see the movie going like, how much pain must they have been in to do this press tour? Be like, this was a great script. I really think what we're doing here is really visionary in the genre. It's like, no, it's not. You know that this is terrible, but you gotta do it. It's part of the game.
I would love to see you forced in front of a camera, being paid to say, yeah, I love this movie. At first, I didn't imagine the main character of Bloody Hell would be played by Roseanne Barr. But
hey, I'm open to suggestions.
I'm very happy. See, I don't think you're as good at lying and spinning as I am. And I don't lie maliciously, but I can play it up, and I can work a room better. I can be entertaining to a lot of strangers and hold court. Like, I can kind of do that. I don't know if you want to do that for your own product.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Let's see how many dollars are at stake the next time I have to do it. We'll talk then.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, there's. Sorry. Yeah.
We should probably.
I think you're
wrap
too
it up.
genuine, and you'd be tempted to be honest and be like. You'd be like John Carpenter, I think.
I
try to keep it real.
I feel like my response would be, it is so awesome to see all of that stuff that I created on the big screen. ...
Right.
I probably would have done it differently. ... But it's still great to see it come to life.
Yeah. Or you just move on like, oh my God, these actors are great and they work so hard and it's so exciting to see you can lean into the truths without actually saying the movie sucks.
Yeah.
But I feel like people that are in the know will see right through you,
That's fine.
Like, that's code for, I hated Roseanne Barr in my movie.
Listen, I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
Anyway, Oh, last thing about this actual episode that I thought was creepy was when Batgirl saves the day, and Bruce looks up and says, "Good girl."
Yeah,
that was pretty weird.
Yeah, and him being on a date, going to a Taylor Swift concert, this was weird.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
You know what's fun about that actually? So the girl who does the voice of his date is Jane Weidlin from the Go-Go's, who also played Joan of Arc in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh,
but you wouldn't recognize her voice from that because Joan of Arc has no lines.
I didn't know that chick was a musician. 'Cause I always had a crush on Joan of Arc. I thought, like, man, she was like Winona Ryder hot, but more off the radar, I thought. You know?
Yeah, she was, I think she was the guitar player in the Go-Go's.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I love it when musicians try acting and they're actually better at it than most actors.
Yes, yeah. And I love...
Like a lot of the people in that Johnny Cash movie with River Phoenix were actually just musicians who happened to be amazing actors all of a sudden.
Right, yes. You know? And I love it when actors try to become musicians and they're terrible at it. It's a nice balancing.
I know. It doesn't usually work the other way, does it?
No.
Johnny Depp.
No. Anyway, but we won't go into all that stuff.
Russell Crowe.
The other thing I would like to mention, and I'm sure if you're still listening to this podcast at this point, it's because you're wondering whether or not I was going to bring this up. Firelit Batman doesn't look as good in this series as it did in the last one. He's just gray. They just made everybody gray.
Yeah, I totally missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, there's nothing really interesting there going on. I was disappointed because I thought Firefly, maybe we'll get some Firelit Batman, but unfortunately not.
But it's not just Batman that's lit. You have to light the whole scene for him to be correct.
Right, yeah.
You know? And I don't think they did that as much.
Because
in the Gray Ghost, that episode, everything was orange and gray. Like everything was, and that's why Firelit Batman looked good, is because everything around him looked good.
Unbelievable.
And
what would you draw on this episode?
I might take a crack at the Firefly costume, maybe tweak it a little bit. I might redesign the jetpack a bit. Like the wings that fold out aren't even bent back. They're not even aerodynamic. It looks like a trash can with two pieces of cardboard sprayed gray.
Yeah, I think I'm probably thinking the same thing. Although I do think doing a longer scene where Batman and Batgirl have to escape that burning building would have been cool.
There's a scene where he falls from a building and his Batarang thing breaks or something. Was that this episode or the other one? But he grabs his cape. He sort of floats over to a different building and manages to fall on the awning and survive. And it reminded me, I had a one-shot story I wanted to pitch years ago. It was a silent comic of Batman, and he's chasing a criminal, and he misjudges how far of a leap it is, and he falls. And everything goes wrong in the next 22 pages as he's like, he grabs a window and someone shuts the window on his fingers, so he falls down another 2 stories, and then he uses the Batarang, and a bird moves it or something, and he's just like, God damn it! It's like nothing's going his way, and by the end of it, the last page, he finally is only 2 stories down, and he lets go and he lands in a dump truck, and that's the whole story.
Nice.
Just
that
one wrong move.
That would be a fantastic Batman black and white story.
Yeah, I wanted to pitch it the first time when I did Batman Black and White, and I pitched another one where Bruce gets a gun and just goes and kills everybody and solves his problems like that way.
Of course you did.
Do you remember that?
I don't. Oh, boy.
Yo, this guy rejected. My editor was actually, I think he was mad at me.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a joke. And I was serious about doing it, but I'm like, this is going to be great. So it starts off, and he's like, you know what, Alfred, spending years doing this. I know I've been avoiding. He's like standing over 2 handguns looking at him, and he's like fretting on what to do. He's like, you know what? Maybe I've been wrong this whole time. You know what? I decided I've been doing this long enough. You know what? Fuck it. So it's basically 7 pages of him going around and murdering all the villains. And he's got like a clever one-liner for each one. So he shoots Harvey Dent. He's like, here's a bullet for you, Harvey. Bam. And one for you too, Two-Face. Bam. And then he goes to Catwoman like, see you later, slut. Bam. I mean, it's not even that clever. And it's just him going on a massacre. And at the very end, he takes the photo of the painting of his parents down. You know, that big scary painting over the fireplace that reminds him of his guilt. Mm-hmm. He just like throws that in the bin. I'm like, I'm done with guilt. And he just is happy at the end of it. Like maybe Batman's problems would be solved if he just grabbed a gun and just murdered all the villains. He could just call it a day. And I know that violates everything about Batman. But it was a joke. Like I was going to do it, but I was playing it up for humor. Mm-hmm. And my editor's like, is this real? And I was like, yeah, man, I think this would be a fun 8-pager. And he's like, okay, first of all, brilliant. Second of all, we could never do this. And I need you to take this seriously now. So I was like, okay. And yeah, that was Mark Doyle. And I think at that point he thought, Sean should never write Batman. He's not even taking it seriously.
Well,
So we got John Arcudi to write it for me, and he wrote a whole story. But yeah, it would have been a good one if I had just pitched him, what if Batman's falling down a building for 8 pages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess that
before
you heard the thing about there's 10 things about Batman that you can't ever change.
Yeah, no, I broke all 10 of them, and that was the point of
it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you eventually got to have Batman go on a killing spree in Curse of White Knight, so it all comes around.
I guess. Man, I've been so predictable my whole career. I didn't realize it. Here I thought I was, breaking new ground, and you could have read the tea leaves years ago. Anyway, on that note.
Yeah, I think we already rated it. We both give it a 3.
Yep.
And I think that's it for Torch Song.
Cool. What's next time?
Next time we are doing The Ultimate Thrill and Over the Edge, which Over the Edge is one we've been looking forward to. So that's going to be a fun one to do.
Those are both good episodes, but yeah. The Ultimate Thrill when the girl orgasms as there's a huge explosion. You'll get there.
It's Roxy Rocket. Okay, excellent.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Is that her first appearance? Has she been in the show before at this point? I can't remember.
I believe it's her first appearance.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent.
Not her last.
Looking forward to those two. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Sean, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. Until next time.
And we will see you next time. Bye.